The wheel strategy is one of the best ways to make passive income in the stock market. So what is it? How much money do you need? Let's talk about it. Hi all, my name is Greg and I make videos about the stock market and options trading. Today we're going to be talking all about one of my favorite option strategies, the wheel. So to break this video down for you, first I'm going to go over the basics of the strategy, followed up by a real example using Robinhood. After that, we're going to go over the risks that are associated with the strategy. And finally, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you the best stocks for the wheel. But before we get into it, if you enjoy these tutorials and you want me to make more, make sure to leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. With that out of the way, let's get into the basics. The wheel strategy is made up in two parts: cash secured puts and covered calls. We're going to talk about the cash secured put first, since this is how you get the wheels to start turning. Whenever you open a cash secured put, you're going to have to sell this option to open. And I know this might be a really weird concept, especially if you're used to buying options, but it's actually pretty simple and I'll explain it later in our example. For now, let's talk about what it takes to sell a cash secured put. When you open any option, you're signing a contract, which is why they're given the name option contracts. And specifically, whenever you sell a cash secured put, you're agreeing to buy 100 shares at the strike price on or before your expiration date. So if I sold a cash secure put on XYZ for a $100 strike price, I'm agreeing to buy 100 shares of XYZ stock at $100 on or before expiration. In the specific example, in order to buy 100 shares of XYZ at a $100 strike price, we're going to have to put down $10,000. And this is what's called collateral. You can calculate the amount of collateral that you need to put down on any cash secure put by multiplying the 100 shares that you're agreeing to buy by the strike price that you choose. And if the stock price decides to come below the strike price that we set, then we're under the obligation to buy 100 shares at our strike price. But just because the share price is below our strike price doesn't mean we automatically get filled on this order and we have to buy 100 shares right then and there. If the share price is below our strike price before our expiration date, technically we are under the obligation to buy 100 shares at the strike price, but it doesn't make any sense for the buyer to actually exercise the option. If the buyer wants to exercise before their expiration date, they're going to be losing out on all the extrinsic time value that's left in this option. So if they decide to exercise a week ahead of time, they're automatically going to be losing that 1 week worth of time value. It would make more sense for the buyer of our option to sell this contract to a new buyer rather than exercising it and taking a loss on the extrinsic time value left in the option. But just because it's not in the buyer's best interest to exercise early doesn't mean it won't happen. Maybe the person that bought this is a new trader and they don't understand this, or maybe they really just want to sell 100 shares to you. So moral of the story here, yes, you can be exercised before expiration, but it's not very likely. But if the expiration date comes around and we're still holding our cash secure put, if the share price is below our strike price, we're finally going to have to buy 100 shares at our strike price that we agreed to. Going back to our XYZ $100 cash secured put example, if XYZ was trading at $90 around 8 p.m. Eastern time, we would be forced to buy 100 shares at our $100 strike price. And you're probably thinking, why the heck would I buy 100 shares at $100 when I could pay $90 for them? Well, that's what you agreed to, but technically, you're not actually paying $100 per share. Let me explain. Whenever we opened our cash secure put, we got paid in credit to put on this trade by the buyer. So if we sold our cash secure put for $2 whenever we opened this trade, we got $200 in premium, and our break-even price is going to be the $100 strike price minus the $2 from the trade. So if our put option was going for $2 whenever we opened our cash secure put, our break-even price can be calculated by subtracting 100 minus the $2 in credit. So technically, we'd be paying $98 a share for the 100 shares that we buy. But don't get it confused. You're still going to have to put down the $10,000 of collateral in order to buy the 100 shares. But the premium that you receive, the options price times the 100 shares you're controlling, the $200 was applied towards your collateral up front. And I know that owning 100 shares can get pretty scary, especially in a volatile market like we're in right now. But this is where the second half of the wheel comes into play. Whenever you get filled for a cash secure put, you're then able to take the 100 shares that you just bought and use that to sell covered calls. Whenever we opened our cash secure put, we agreed to buy 100 shares at the strike price, but whenever we sell a covered call option, we're agreeing to sell 100 shares at our strike price. So if you open a covered call for XYZ at a $110 strike price, you're agreeing to sell 100 shares of XYZ at $110 on or before the expiration date. The on or before expiration date clause again means that you can be filled in your order before expiration, but it's unlikely. But if XYZ is trading at $110 on our expiration date at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we have to sell our 100 shares at $110. And to put on this trade, just like the contract suggests, you have to have 100 shares down as collateral. This means if you only own 100 shares, you're not able to sell out of a single share before the expiration date, because if you had 99 shares, you wouldn't be able to fill your obligation if the buyer decides to exercise early. Now, if you have over 100 shares, maybe like 150 shares, you're still able to sell 50 shares before the expiration date. But anything above 50, it shouldn't be possible. Using our XYZ example again with the $110 covered call that we sold, we're going to be selling our 100 shares for $110 a piece, for a total of $11,000. But technically, we're not selling our shares for $110. Instead, what we're selling at is our break-even price, which can be calculated by taking the premium and adding that to our strike price. So if we got paid $200 in premium to put on this trade, technically we're selling our shares for $113. And that's the basics. We covered the cash secure put, we covered the covered call. Now let's get into a real example. So I just started to use the wheel strategy on a company that I really believe in and a stock that I want to own 100 shares of, and this was SSPK, which is the Weedmaps SPAC. In order to start this trade, I went over to their option chain, but I decided on an expiration date of April 16th since I wanted a little more time value for my option. I sold this for $230, now it's going for $405, so if I had waited just a few days for SSPK to fall another 15% or so, I could have been paid $175 more in order to put on this trade. If I wanted to buy it back now and I didn't want to buy these SSPK shares anymore, I'd be taking a $175 loss. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I would do would be to sell another cash secure put at an out of the money strike price. Generally, you don't want to open a cash secure put for a strike price above the share price because it doesn't make any real sense since you would be agreeing to buy 100 shares at $20 when it's trading at $18.20. But you will get paid more in premium since these options have intrinsic value, which is calculated by taking the strike price minus the share price, which would be $1.80 right now. So if I wanted to buy even more shares of SSPK, what I would probably want to do would be to sell a $15 strike price, and for this we would get paid $83 in credit. So if we continue to open this trade and we put in one contract, it's actually going for $80, we'd be paid $80 in minimum credit, and our collateral that we're putting down to buy the 100 shares at $15 would be $1,500. And if SSPK was trading below $15 by April 16th, our expiration date would be filled on our order to buy 100 shares at $15, but technically we'd be paying $14.20 for these. We'd subtract the $80 that we got right here from the collateral we put down, $1,500, we'd be spending $1,420 to buy the 100 shares. And if you want to decrease the odds of your option actually getting filled, you'd be going deeper out of the money. So if I didn't want to be filled at all, I would sell the $10 strike price, since the chances of SSPK falling below $10 since it's a SPAC is pretty dang low. And if we got filled on our $15 option and we had to buy our 100 shares at $15, that's when the second part of the wheel strategy kicks into place and we'd be selling covered calls. So if I had 100 shares of the stock, I don't now, I have 70 shares that I bought for $19, I'd be selling the $25 call option for $123 of credit. So if we open this option, it's actually $120. We'd be getting $120 of credit, and my collateral would have to be 100 shares. So if this trade went through and SSPK was trading at $25 by our expiration date of April 16th, we'd be selling our 100 shares for $25 each, but technically we'd be selling them for $26.20 since we got $120 of credit. I think that I would be selling these shares way below their 5-year potential, but that's what I would agree to if I open this covered call. And personally, what I like to do whenever I'm using the wheel strategy is take whatever profits I make from these options and I buy new shares with those. And that pretty much wraps up this SSPK example. So let's get into the risks. The wheel strategy is generally a safer strategy, but there are some caveats that come along with it. For a cash secure put, whenever you open your option, you're agreeing to buy 100 shares at the strike price. So if you sell at a $50 strike price and the stock plummets all the way to $20, you still have to buy your 100 shares at $50 even though it's trading at $20. This means that the stock was trading at $20, you could have bought your 100 shares for $2,000, but instead you're paying $5,000 to buy the 100 shares at $50. Now you can always buy your cash secure put back if you want to close this option before it expires and you no longer want to buy your 100 shares, but if the stock is falling like a knife, you might lose out on a lot of money. If you sold your put option for $100 of credit and suddenly the stock drops and the option is going for $500, if you want to buy that option back, you no longer want to buy your 100 shares, you're going to be taking a $400 loss. Since you sold that contract for $100 and you're buying it back for $500, you have to pay the $400 difference. And the same thing goes for covered calls, but the stock has to move in the opposite direction. If I sold a covered call option on XYZ and I was paid $100 in credit and suddenly XYZ starts flying to the moon, maybe this option is going for $1,000 now. If I don't want to sell my 100 shares anymore, I'd be taking a $900 loss. Now the person who bought this contract is going to be super happy because they just made a 900% return. But you on the other hand actually took a 900% loss. And that's the thing whenever it comes to the wheel strategy. You can actually lose more than the credit that you receive for your option. Since a stock theoretically has no cap on what the share price can go to, you can take an infinite loss on a covered call option. Realistically, this probably won't happen since every stock usually gets hit with a reality check if they're flying up too much, but if your option expiration date is too short and you're holding this into expiration, you have to sell your 100 shares at your strike price no matter what the share price is. So if you sold a covered call option on GME for a $100 strike price a couple months ago, if GME was trading at $500 at your expiration date, you'd still have to sell your 100 shares at your $100 strike price. So you'd be taking a $40,000 unrealized loss since you could have sold your shares at $500, but you actually sold them for $100. So hopefully from this GME example, you can understand how risky this strategy can be. This is going to be on the upper limits of risk since GME is absolutely insane, which brings me to the best stocks for the strategy. So maybe you have a lot of money to play around with and you can take on the risk of buying 100 shares of GME. If you opened a cash secure put for GME whenever they were trading at their bottom around $40 or $50, you would have got a ton of premium. Generally, whenever a stock is super volatile, you're going to be paid more in premium to run the wheel strategy. So if you're feeling a little bit risque, then the best stocks for you might be GME or AMC. That's not my cup of tea, but power to the players. For me, a couple risky volatile stocks that I'm okay with owning 100 shares of are SSPK, the example from earlier, and Himax. Both of these stocks are under $20, which means I only need $2,000 in order to start the wheel strategy on these. A couple weeks ago, I had $5,000 of cash laying around and I wanted to put this to work, so I decided to sell put options on Himax and SSPK. And I'm 100% okay with buying 100 shares of both of these stocks at the strike prices I agreed to. And that's the number one most important thing to keep in mind whenever you're starting the wheel strategy. You have to be okay with owning 100 shares of the stock and you have to be okay with paying the strike price for the shares. Keeping this in mind, maybe you're not comfortable owning 100 shares of a stock like SSPK that drops 5% in a single day. If you use this strategy on a more established company, generally they're going to have more stable share price. And if you're looking for a safe bet whenever it comes to the wheel strategy, the best stocks for you are going to be in the financial sector and high dividend stocks. This would include stocks like AT&T, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. All these stocks are under $40, so you only need $4,000 in cash in order to start using the wheel strategy on them. But keep in mind, since these are more risk-averse stocks, you're not going to be paid as much premium since they aren't as volatile. Now, if you got even more money to throw around and you're still feeling a little bit risk-averse, then maybe FANG is better for you. And honestly, if you have enough money to buy 100 shares of Amazon, you're basically Jeff Bezos himself. And the higher the stock price is, the more amount of premium you're going to be paid. So with our example from earlier with Wells Fargo or Bank of America, we'd probably get about 2% a week, and your FANG stocks are probably going to be making about 2% a week as well. But instead of making 2% on $4,000, you're going to be making 2% of like $50,000, depending on which stock you buy. And finally, the last category of stocks that are best for the wheel strategy are disruptive companies. This is going to be stocks like Tesla, Peloton, Roku, or Zoom. Obviously, there's a lot more disruptive companies that aren't on this list, but these 4 stocks have had a solid track record ever since the illness came in and changed our world, and I think these companies have a bright future ahead of them. Again, these aren't stock suggestions. You should always do your own due diligence and find a stock that you're actually comfortable holding 100 shares of. And with that said, that wraps up the wheel strategy for today. And before I go, I want to say thank you to all my patrons for their support. And if you want to join my patron list, I'll have a link down in the description below where you'll get access to live Q&A and trading sessions each week, price analyses for the stocks that I'm watching, and also I'll help you with some price analysis on the stocks you're interested in. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of this video. And as always, remember to stay positive, stay green. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye guys.